Welcome to Sid and Malcolm, brought to you exclusively on malcolmpresents.com. Hi, hey Sid, how you doing?
I am fine.
Yeah,
We
now,
are we are in the process of getting started an advocacy project. I have an intern that is starting this week, and we're excited about working together.
oh, good. Now, you said you got them from a local high school, or where did you get your intern?
Well, in the past, Rock and Rap has been a member of Pencil, which is a public school networking organization, and you get to serve as a as principal of a high school. And I served twice as principal of high schools, and they got to know Rock and Wrap It Up and its programs. And I was reached out to about a month ago, asking if I could be a mentor to someone who was interested in doing advocacy work, and I agreed.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah,
The
yeah.
You're good now.
Now, I was thinking of you yesterday because I was watching the Home Run Derby. I don't know if
Yes,
you saw that. And I was watching them, measure the home runs and then affect the arc, the video. And I was thinking of your measurements. Do they
it's
still use that?
yes, it's interesting because what I put together is now the foundation of all measurement systems that are set up now. What I did
Wow.
30 years ago, but it was interesting because uh, is a mile-high stadium, and at the altitude of over 5,000 feet, balls are going to travel further.
Right.
And last night you saw there was a home run measured to over 510 feet. And I was first told that by Ralph Kiner, who was an announcer for the Mets for many years. And Ralph was one of the real well-known home run hitters. He hit over runs for 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
And when I was on his program, Kindness Corner, he told me that the longest home runs that he ever hit was when he played winter ball in Mexico City. And that stadium also is over a mile high. And those were the longest balls that he had ever hit.
Well, I mean, there's so many changes at the ball, because whether how they make the ball, whether the cotton is spun tighter, whether they're spun less. Uh,
Well,
Depends on how far the ball goes. Also, how high the
that
pitches.
is part of the, well, it's a combination of things. There is a standard was a standard in baseball. It's now changed. And that standard is called the ability of the ball to have a coefficient of restitution. So if you were to drop a ball, the ball would come up. Restitution is a standard. It used to be 0.53. No matter how high you dropped it from, it would come up less than half of when you dropped it from. And that 0.53 was a standard in baseball. It's changed this year, and in 2021, the coefficient of restitution is 0.46, which is more than 10% different, which means that there'll be fewer home runs hit. If all the other parameters are the same, the coefficient of restitution will prevent balls from traveling as far as the restitution is 0.53.
By the way,
And
most of it is good, but we're still freezing a little bit, but not as bad.
Okay. The coefficient of restitution is done in Haiti, where most of the balls are made. The same company's been making balls for year after year. And as long as the coefficient of restitution is the same for all players, then it isn't a problem. If the ball has a mistake to it, then there's a chance the ball could either go further or not. If the ball is not constructed the same.
Yeah, and it's also where the pitching mound is. I remember, I forget what year it was, and I think it was someplace in the 60s where Bob Gibson had like a .00 one earned run average, and they said, okay, now we're going to have to make it even for the batters, and they lower the pitcher's mound, so he didn't have the trajectory it has today.
Right. Well, it's interesting because every home run hitter has pretty much the same physical attribute, which is that he's launching the ball at point. The best home run hitters are swinging at 0.39 from the standard. So it's something like that. And that will give you the furthest distance in the aggregate.
Did you ever think of becoming a hitting coach?
No,
But,
I just do the math.
but anyway, getting back to what the show was about, you're talking about legislation that would well, tell us what it's. I didn't have time to read what you sent me, so.
So in 2007, my wife Diane and some people working with us did a survey of pantries across the United States, and we found that as the current generation of baby boomers were aging, they, unlike their parents, were taking advantage of getting free food throughout the country, and places were running out of food. So I came up with this idea that one of the simple ways to get more food would be to do research, and we did. One of my new employees in 2007 was a gentleman by the name of John Kluge. John Kluge. Yeah, John Kluge's son.
Oh, okay.
Worked for me when he graduated Columbia, and did was he wanted to introduce me to a lot of the people that his father had been friends with. His father was the first billionaire. He owned Metro Media.
Yeah, I worked at WNEW TV when Kluge owned it.
Right. So one of the things that John Kluge's father did afterwards was he cornered the market on optical fiber right before there was internet. And he really did very well because of it, on top of everything else that he had done. So John Kluge Jr. took me to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Library of Congress. John's father had given $72 million to upgrade the Library of Congress, and John Jr. had an office there. And we wound up going for lunch with the librarian. And during lunch, we were talking about Rock and Wrap It Up. And he said to me, you know, we do over 200 events a year at the Library of Congress, and a lot of them have food left over. And I said, what do you do with the leftover food? And he had a conundrum. He had no idea. Well, it turned out that all the food was being thrown away. So in a period of a week, I met with the DC Central Kitchen, one of the bigger pantries in Washington, and we arranged to have all the food from those events go to feed the hungry in Washington, which gave me the idea, why not a law that all federal buildings that have food either as concessions or because they're doing events like the Library of Congress have to feed the hungry in those cities where the buildings are. And in 2007, I wrote the Federal Food Donation Act along with Joel Berg, who at the time was working for Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman. He had been a friend of mine. And we were able to get the law in front of one of members, a woman by the name of Congresswoman Joanne Emerson. She replaced her late husband in Congress when he passed in 1997. And Joe said that she thinks that she could get this law through the Republican side. And one of my close friends, Pete Sobel, who sadly just passed away, was very close friends with Phil Shalero, who was the most powerful chief of staff. He worked for Henry Waxman, who was from LA.
Yeah.
I had a meeting with Pete Sobel, and John Kluge came down with me, and we wound up. Phil Scialera said that he thinks that he could get it through the blue states, and I said, well, Joe and Emerson could get it through the red states. Let's see what we could do. And in September of 2007, the law was introduced to the Congress, and 29 days later, it was passed unanimously by both sides, which was a very strange time because it was right before the contested election of John McCain and Barack Obama. And even though there was a contentious Congress, we were able to get it passed in the House. It was the fastest bill ever to go through Congress in 230 years at the time.
Wow.
I then was friendly with Chuck Schumer. When Chuck was a congressman, Chuck volunteered at a soup kitchen I started in 1995, 96. I met with Chuck, and he said if I could get it through the House, which he didn't think I could, he could get it through the Senate. And once it passed through the House, I had a meeting with him, and we were able to get Senator Menendez from New Jersey. And on the Democratic side, on the Republican side, we're able to get Senator Susan Collins from Maine. And in 2 months, it passed in the Senate. 2008, President George W. Bush signed it into law.
Right.
And
Just curiosity, were these standalone bills, or were they part of a?
no, I was told to do it as part of the Farm Bill, and I said no. I said I believe this is a strong enough standalone bill, and I had interns working with me that summer, 2 high school juniors, and these girls called up 400 Congress people's chief of staffs and asked for support, and it was through that agency that bill passed. When I wrote the bill, it was to be just not a standalone bill, but to have a similar bill on a state level, to have all state institutions that had food, and that included state colleges, state hospitals, state penitentiaries, any state building that had food. Our goal was to have shared individual communities that the food was generated. And I had a very hard time getting it on the state level until about 4 years ago, in 2016 or 17. I did a talk for the National School Board Association in Nashville, Tennessee. And I always ended my talks, I was the keynote speaker. And I always ended my talks with, and by the way, we have written the Federal Food Donation Act. You know, people in your state legislators, get a hold of me, because this act would be fabulous on a state level. Well, I finished speaking. I go down to the podium, the meeting ends. A gentleman rushes to me. He said, Syd, I'm the assistant majority leader of state of Tennessee Congress, and I want to pass this law. And 2 years later, Tennessee became the first state to pass the State Food Donation Act. A year later, in 2019, presented it to State Senator Todd Kaminsky, who's from our area, and it took him a year. It failed the first year, but in 2020, Todd got the State Food Donation Act passed in the state of New York. So I now have 2 states that understand the power that this law has, and now I'm looking to expand this to every state in this country to go along with the Federal Food Donation Act.
Are you working in California?
I have not started yet, but I will once the intern joins us. I have on how to teach lobbying. A lot of it is a standard script that they use, but the key is to get to the right people in the office. And the people that are the right people for us have always been the chief of staff as long as that the state senator or the state assemblyman had already passed legislation that was, and a lot of times when you do homework on the internet, you could see what bills they've already submitted, and that's how you know who to go to have this bill put on.
Let me know when you start working in California, because I've been involved with a small amount in politics, but I enjoy it. So let me know, and who do I have to contact, the arms I have to twist, or not even the arms I have to twist, because it's a good bill. From what it sounds.
What we found over the years is that most bills, it takes 3 years to pass the bill. Each of the state assembly, each of the state senators can put either 3 or 5 new legislations every term. So you have to make sure that they haven't used their 3 to 5 slots, or your bill will not see the light of day.
Right.
But we already have, and what I sent you in the brochure is a dummy of what the bill looks like for each state. For New York State, we have added a little bit to our aggressive on be. New York State put in an anaerobic digester for food that can't go to the hungry. So they now have, starting in 2022, every large facility that is generating over 50,000 pounds of leftover food a year that's not going to feed the hungry must purchase an anaerobic digester to convert that food into methane. And
wow.
you now have a way of generating power. Just would have gone to landfill and heated up the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas. Now it could be changed. So New York State has done that. And my goal is to get this State Food Donation Act to include this caveat if the state wants to go in that direction. If they don't want to put in anaerobic as just say that you have to have state colleges, state penitentiaries, state hospitals that have food prepared but not served or sold, feed the hungry where they are. Right. And these are some of the things that Rock and Wrap It Up has done. We have another advocacy project which our intern will be interested in, and that is a what we call Hannah's Project. New York State became the first state 3 years ago to have their middle schools and high schools supply feminine products to teens. And that law passed. Unfortunately, it never included any money. So it's a great law, but who's going to pay for it? And that's where Rock and Wrap It Up comes in. We have a project called the Hannah's Project, which basically asks women to buy a second box of product each month. They're buying product each month anyway, as they're in childbearing years. So with a donation of $3 to $5 a month for an extra box in the school's girls' gym, so girls do not ever have to ask for these products if they are indigent. They're always there, and they have their dignity, and they don't have to be ashamed. They can go into the girls' gym and take what they need. We already have this in place right here in Long Island. Our first school to do this was Lynbrook High School, and this is their 3rd year. And this year, obviously, there weren't many kids going to school, but they'll continue the program starting next year.
Have you contacted the manufacturers to see whether they would donate product?
It's too big a donation.
But if you, well, again, I don't know. Being
We've already done this.
Okay,
None of the manufacturers, they want to make a one-time donation. So what? Girls are getting their period.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of if they have their name on the dispenser or whatever.
No.
Okay.
We found it's easier to convince people to buy a second box each month,
Okay.
and girls are already doing that. And they've already said, yeah, we buy 2 boxes. One we put in the girls' locker room. And so that's another law that Rock and Wrap It Up has written and now wants passed in all other states in this country. Other than food, feminine products are the #1 asset that we're asked for. So a national problem that all pantries and shelters have the exact same issues. So we believe that by having this law passed, it'll address a significant problem that no one talks about.
Yeah. Well, I noticed one thing as far as in the advertising world that the advertising for feminine products, for even toilet paper, is becoming much more. It's fun nowadays.
Yeah,
The way they're advertising it, they never did it in the old days, but now they're bringing it
no,
up, and they're doing it in a way that's not, well, not that it's not offensive, but it's not sensitive. It's sort of like fun.
right. And that'll only change and get better as the current generation of girls and boys uh, are not squeamish about this, or not making fun of it, or doing something that would make it deleterious to be spoken about.
Well,
And
it reminds me of the story when I was a teenager. I had a part-time job, and downstairs, in New York, where they have all these stores downstairs in the apartment building. Down in my apartment building, there was a pharmacy on the corner, and I used to work in the pharmacy. And I would probably from the ages of like 16 to 18, 19. And I would notice, like, if I was behind the counter and a teenage girl would come in and she'd look at me and walk out,
right,
I knew she was trying to buy
feminine products.
products, but they would be embarrassed.
That has changed. But you know what? I had the same thing happen, Malcolm. When I was 10, my mother always used to get bad periods. And I would have to go to the grocery store to get her big Kotex
Yeah.
box. And the first time I did it, I was embarrassed, but then I had to do it. She couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I just did what I had to do. I was just glad that the storekeep was not making a joke out of it and asking me, well, what size does she need? Or what color does she need? He
Yeah.
didn't do that.
Well, it reminds me, it's the same thing when I was in my 20s and I was actually living with my girlfriend, and she had the same thing. She had a bad period, and she sent me down to buy sanitary napkins. And I never realized there was such a choice.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was standing by the counter, and it looked like a football field. What do I buy?
Well, that we're talking about it now is so important because people will hear the broadcast and hopefully get back to us and say they would like to do this in their schools, or their daughters
Yeah.
would like to
Uh,
their schools. It's a
yeah.
great project. In fact, Lynbrook High School, it is their student government's project. Boys are not doing it, obviously, but half the student government are girls, and they just took to it like a fish to water because it just made sense to them, and there was no second discussion. Word went out. Please buy. We could store them in the nurse's office or the guidance council, or in the girls' gym themselves.
Yeah, well, again,
Somebody just has to go.
yeah, well, women are becoming more not embarrassed about their needs.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's becoming, this is what a woman is. This is what happens. This happens once a month. This is why, yeah, they're childbearing age. So
Well,
it's no longer oh my God, she has a period, like a whispered.
well, that we want to do these laws simultaneously because they're anti-poverty laws. And I think that it would have traction to have them presented separately, but to the same people. So if you find someone that is socially active uh, in in Congress or in the Senate, they would be, both laws would have the same appeal to them.
Right. Well,
And then, maybe they would put them in together, maybe separately. They want both presented at the same time because they're important laws for us. And this is one of the things that I am most proud of is that we passed the Federal Food Donation Act. People say to me, "How do you do it?" I said, "We just lobby," and
you do it.
people had to lobby. If it's a strong act and it makes sense to people, which it did, in 1996, the first of the laws that are in our law were called the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan. And the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act basically said that if you are giving away food safely to feed the hungry, you cannot be sued. There is no liability. Even if somebody gets sick, as long as you've handled the food safely, you are doing a mitzvah by doing this. And that law passed unanimously in 1996. And I remember when it passed, because we already had started Rock and Wrap It Up 5 years before that. But the Federal Food Donation Act has in it Bill Emerson Good Samaritan law. So people could, again, because there's so many questions that come up, and there is so much, fluff that people don't know answers to, and they'll make stuff up. This liability issue, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not going to give away my food because I'm going to get sued." Well, that's why we immediately put it into the Federal Food Donation Act. And the amount of people that can benefit from this can feed most of America that's hungry by having this leftover food being able as an asset to go to agencies that fight hunger.
Yeah, there's so much food going to waste. It's
Yep.
I mean, or as you would say, it's a shanda. It's a real shame.
I will tell you that today is the All-Star game in Denver. For the last 15 years, they didn't have a game last year, but the last year, 2019, from 20, all the leftover for the All-Star game went to Rock and Wrap It Up. And we would arrange in each city that the game would be played in. Well, I reached out to Major League Baseball about a week ago, and I asked them, I know it's not too late, but what are you doing with your leftover food from the All-Star game in Denver? Nobody got back to me yet. Nobody, which pissed me off a little bit, because someone should have written back and said, well, we've taken here, or we haven't taken care of it. One of the things that we gave Major League Baseball on top of the poundage, greenhouse gas was diverted by you giving the food away from Miami. When the game was played there a couple of years ago, we arranged for 2 different agencies to get all the food from the new stadium in where the Miami Marlins play. And the All-Star game was played there. And we give them how much greenhouse gas is diverted. Now we tell them, how many meals did you really give away? Using an algorithm that we have from the US Department of Agriculture. Now we've added water. How much water has been saved by you away and not having to have it replaced by food, by new food? So all of this are statistics that they love getting. So we'll see what happens after the game tonight. They may reach out to me and say, we're sorry, or we couldn't do it. Or hopefully they'll be able to do it anyway, even though we're not involved.
Well, in the case of the All-Star game, who would you contact? Who would be in charge of that?
There are a couple of agencies that work with Major League Baseball. They hire a catering company. So the catering companies who I would work with. And in the past, they would refrigerate the food and I would pick it up the next day.
Well, I know back when I was a teenager, the big company of doing catering, I think, was Stevens.
Yeah, Harry M. Stevens.
Harry M. Stevens. He did, I think, Yankee Stadium, Ebbets Field, the Polo Grounds. Are they still? Are those guys still in business now?
Harry M. Stevens is not, but the equivalency of them is Delaware North, Airmark, Levy.
Or Airmark is?
Legends, all of that are agencies that we have worked with. I have to get rid of this.
Right, that's
Paul.
okay.
Hold on.
He's
Rock and
trying
wrap
to
it up.
say-
Hello. Paul? Saul, let me call you right back. I'm doing a podcast.
No problem.
Thanks, Saul.
Unless Saul wants to be on the show.
No, it's all right. Saul's a volunteer for us. Saul helps us run the Thanksgiving programs. All these.
Oh, well, by the way, actually, our time is up. I just wanted to let you know I'm working with Pat Alicia. I told you. I think we're going to start our first show Friday.
Fabulous.
As you know, as he's commander of the
Yeah.
American Legion of Nassau County. So we're going to talk.
I always like to show up. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I see your Bronzeville tattoo. It's coming front and center.
I want to see that.
What out of curiosity, you know,
Yeah.
I've always seen you in your, you know, cut in your t-shirts and your tattoos. When you go to speak, do you wear a jacket and tie?
Most of the time.
Mm.
I don't want to scare them off. But Pat's a great man. Let's see if I I used to have a picture of Pat in his uniform.
I don't have a uniform, but I have the name of the show is Commander Pat Alicia.
Commander Pat, General Pat.
Yeah, well, it was a brigadier general.
Yeah.
Ah,
Well,
I
so
see.
that is Syd in clothing, and that is Pat in his general regalia.
I wouldn't recognize you in clothing and a dark beard or dark goatee.
Yeah, so you have to see that. That is great
Yeah,
shot.
no, it's good.
Yeah, so we've another great hour, I think, right?
Yeah, or half hour. But as I say, I've done some lobbying work when in New York, and I had to lobby for the Board of Education. And I had
I
to go
would
up.
keep you in mind, and what I would do is I would have our intern work with you if you want, as she reaches out to state legislators to see what would be the best ones to present this law.
Right. Yeah. What I would need is someone more or less to do the grunt work, as you know, the volunteers to find out who I would have to contact, and then I could talk to you and you know, about the salient
She
points of.
will do the work. I mean, I will have a script for her, and you could take a look at it when it's done,
Yeah.
and you can see what she's going to be saying to people.
Right. And I remember when I was just going back to when I was doing for the Board of Education in New York City, and it was the trick was how to get your point. You know, when you go up to speak to a legislator, how do you get your point from the third floor to the ground floor and do your selling? Because most of the time, that's where you do most of your work.
Absolutely.
We see eye to eye. You have to, you know, talk to them, being succinct, getting your point to say thank you. I'll give your office a call.
Well,
Anyway, Syd, as once again, it's been delightful.
you got to see another aspect of what we do.
Yeah, hey, listen, I get, again, I hate to keep on saying this week after week, I get so damn impressed
Well,
by all the work that you're doing. And
I'm doing it along. This is an actually better picture. Here's the one.
I'd like to, in fact, I can speak to Pat and see, because I have a picture with him in a jacket, in a regular suit. I want him in his uniform.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, right?
Yeah. But anyway, let everybody know the show.
Send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me, and tell all your friends in your organization to listen to MalcolmPresents.com, Syd and Malcolm, and we have all our shows on, all the past shows, so they could be filled in.
Great.
Meantime, do me a favor, speak to Diane, see what we could do. We still have, it wasn't major, but we still have blockage. It was still a glitch.
Okay.
So
Okay. We will see what else we could do.
Yeah, I mean, with one of your volunteers or something, maybe you have somebody that's a computer whiz that could help you. Did you have other problems with your Zooming, or no meetings, just with me? Maybe it's just California. Anyway.
This is great. Thank you so much, Malcolm, again.
Have a good week. Keep cool.
Vaya con Dios.
Bye.